Are you ready to take control of your financial future? Barry Watts with WealthCare has the strategies you need to plan for a successful retirement. Whether you're planning for retirement, saving to live out your dreams, or looking to grow your wealth, Barry has resources to guide you every step of the way. Barry and the team at WealthCare develop customized plans to help you achieve your financial goals. Welcome to Watts on Wealth with Barry Watts.
Hi friends, and welcome into Watts on Wealth, the TV show. I'm your host, Ralph Hipp. On our show today, we'll learn some cutting-edge financial strategies and some tips from Barry on creating income for life in your retirement, as J. Barry Watts is here, the founder and CEO of the WealthCare Corporation. He's been serving families in and around Springfield on retirement planning for many, many years. And Barry, with our very fun radio show we do, you've got your microphone, I've got my microphone, but good to be here in the studio with you face to face. Great to see you, bud.
Thank you. It's good to be here with you and with our viewers today.
Always a pleasure. Many of us look forward to retirement. We think when we get there, it's going to be a can of corn and a piece of cake. It's going to be easy breezy. This assumption once you get to retirement that it's so easy. We do all that hard work before we get to that special moment, that special day. Now we can enjoy retirement. But I've been retired about a year and a half now. Still love doing a little media work and doing TV and radio with you, for example. We have that nagging suspicion that all is not quite right. And Barry, what can we expect when we really do head into retirement?
Well, I think the problem, Ralph, is that you've never retired before. And you know, experience is the best teacher. And if you don't have any experience, then you might not get it right the first time out. And so that means that as you approach retirement, you have to approach it as a learner for the first time, learning new things. And you don't have to wait to learn. You can start learning before you even get to retirement. You can learn about the things that you might encounter in retirement, and you can actually begin positioning yourself personally in your lifestyle, but also in your finances, so you are ready to take advantage of the opportunities that come to you, protect yourself against the dangers, and in the process, increase the confidence that you carry into retirement.
And confidence is so critical. It's such an important element, right?
It is tremendously important. When people come to me, what they are lacking is confidence. Now, none of them ever say that they are lacking confidence. They tell me, well, I'm worried about this, I'm worried about that thing. They've got issues. But if you could really boil the issues down to what is the deal? The deal is they're 65 years old or somewhere around that. They're pretty much ready to retire. They know it's coming whether they even wanted it to or not. And they just haven't worked their way through the steps and don't know what comes next. So they don't know how to position themselves so that when they take that step into retirement, they know their feet will be on solid ground. And that's what we do at the WealthCare Corporation, is we help them follow the steps to retirement confidence.
Well, the insight that retirement planners like you have, Barry, it's just absolutely invaluable.
Well, that's one of the reasons that I got into this business. What you don't know can hurt you, particularly in retirement. And we see people get hurt in retirement all the time, and we want to be able to see those things that might damage you and protect you from them before you get to them.
And Barry, what are some of the things we just absolutely have to know when we come in and see you?
Well, first of all, one of the things that you need to know is about taxes. What's going to happen to taxes and how taxes are going to impact your retirement. And most people have no idea. One of the other things that you need to know about is healthcare. How are you going to pay for healthcare in retirement? Now, people do think about this somewhat, particularly if they're retiring a couple of years prior to age 65, so they have to bridge themselves to Medicare. But even when you get to Medicare, you're not going to have just a walk in the park. You have to pay for your Medicare. People don't know that. And people don't know that your neighbor may be paying more or less for Medicare than you are, all based on their income. And so we want to manage what gets reported on your tax return so it shows the lowest amount of income possible. Even though you may have a lot more income than that, it's not taxable income. And that way it doesn't go against what you have to pay for Medicare. You need to think about your income needs overall. How are you going to pay the bills when you retire? And can you pay them? And do you have enough? The funny thing is, Ralph, I see people, I heard this week, this wasn't one of my cases, but there was a lady who came in, she was in her mid-50s, she had $5,000 saved for retirement. And when asked how she was going to pay for retirement, she said she was just going to live off the interest.
Of $5,000.
Yeah, on $5,000. Now, the other side of that is I personally have a client who has about $3.5 million in her mid-60s, living on $50,000-$60,000 a year, and she's worried that she'll never have enough money in retirement. And so, both of those are bad psychology on opposite sides of the spectrum. So you have to think about this clearly, not emotionally, but logically. What are the facts? And we're able to look at it from a fact-set basis, just saying, what are the facts of your income? What's your Social Security? What's your pension? How much income do you tell us that you need? And then we can take what you've said you need and we can put an inflation factor on that so we grow it year after year. But there are other risks that you have to think about. You've got to think about, well, what's going to happen in the markets and how are those fluctuations going to impact the amount that I've saved up? And what if I live a really long life? Instead of dying in the mid-80s, what if I live all the way to age 98? How do I make sure that I can pay for that? So these are the kinds of things that can be game changers for people. And if you haven't prepared for them properly, you can stumble into retirement and stumble in retirement, and then you don't make it to the end of retirement and the end of life with enough money. And that's the kind of stuff we help people with at the Wealth Care Corporation.
Every day. All right. Barry, sure looking forward to continuing our conversation. We've got a lot more of the show to go here. And up next on Watts on Wealth, the TV show, Barry and I will dive into the biggest misconception about investing for retirement. Later on, Barry explains how to put your money in some different tax buckets. That's all coming up straight ahead on the Watts on Wealth TV show. Don't go anywhere. Stay right here with us.
How does your future look in retirement? When you don't have a strategy, the future might look a little fuzzy. But with someone asking the right questions and helping you learn where you truly stand, it can become easier to work towards your goals. You need a plan to help generate income that will last as long as you need it. And the first step to creating an income plan is an analysis of where you are now. Let us help you bring your retirement into focus with your free income analysis today.
Barry and I are sure glad to have you with us for Watts on Wealth, the TV show. I'm your host, Ralph Hipp, here with Barry. Hope you're also joining us on our radio show. Barry, the founder, chief tax strategist, and retirement designer with the Wealth Care Corporation right there at Highway 65 and Battlefield Road in Springfield. Barry, of course, people all around Springfield and the Ozarks, we get bombarded with all kinds of information about our upcoming retirement. How do you help them cut through all the noise of, let's say, what may come in the mailbox or emails?
Well, I think an interesting question to ask, Ralph, is simply this. If what you knew wasn't necessarily so, when would you want to know it? And obviously the answer is sooner instead of later. There is so much information coming from people to people at all sides, and it's hard to digest that information and know what to believe and what not to believe. And I'm just going to give you a little tip here. There's a pretty good chance that the guy at the water cooler who's spent 40 years of his career stamping out product on the assembly line or whatever it is, even in the executive suite, might not be the person who knows the rules. We have people all the time who come to us who are very financially sophisticated professionals, but there are all kinds of things they don't know about tax rules and investment rules, and they don't know how to do the planning because this is a special discipline. Now, one of the problems we've got is we got this 24-hour news cycle where people are competing for your eyeballs. Ralph, you used to be in the news business, and you know the news has to be sexy in order to get people to keep watching so you can sell advertising
and we
at the
talk
station.
About breaking news. People don't even pay attention to breaking news.
Well, it's because it's not breaking news. It was news that broke last week, and they just show it as breaking news on the TV screen.
On the ticker on the bottom we talk about.
And so you've got all this assaulting you and coming at you, and you don't know what you really do need to listen to and what you can kind of dismiss. And in the meantime, you get invitations every week for workshops and dinner seminars. And so in the midst of all this, it's just important to find an advisor you can trust. And I think one of the first ways to figure that out is to kind of key in to what questions they're asking right up front. If the first thing they want to do is get their hands on your statements, that's probably the wrong advisor for you. In fact, sometimes people will come in to see me and they start shoving their information across the conference table, and I just shove it back to them because that's not where we begin. We begin with a conversation about who you are as a person and what it is that you want to accomplish in retirement. We'll get around to how much have you accumulated and do you have enough to get you there. But first, Tell me what it is that you want to accomplish in your retirement. So I think it's very important that you have an advisor who starts with those kind of questions as opposed to wanting to see your statements. We always tell people the first time you come see us, leave your checkbook at home. We're not expecting you to write a check. That's not what we want, and we don't think that's helpful. Leave your checkbook at home, which allows you to come into the room and not be quite so tense about what that meeting is going to be, because it's really just going to be a conversation among friends. In fact, we call our meetings visits, because we're going to visit about who you are, who Sheila is, what the two of you want to accomplish in retirement, and then we'll talk about what you've got accumulated at some point, and we'll begin building a plan to be sure that you get to where you want to go for all the reasons that are important to you in retirement.
I would add to it, Barry, I would call it a values visit. You go with their values and their legacy. Very important starting point, and kind of go from there.
Well, so one person comes in and they are all about being sure they give something to the kids and the grandkids. The next person says, I educated the kids, that's enough. I'm not worried at all about giving them anything extra. I want to spend all the money. In fact, I am reading a book right now called Die with Zero.
Interesting.
It's pretty interesting because it's a challenge to my brain. Well, I'm not reading it. Actually, I'm listening to it on Audible, and I'm of the age where I like a book with paper on it, and so listening to that book is challenging. But I'm trying to get with the modern generation, where we listen to our books, and I can exercise while I'm listening, and they tell me that's important, and I need to do that. So I'm trying hard.
Two things at one time.
That's
there.
right.
Yeah. So, Barry, of course, there's some very important things that all of us around the Ozarks need to understand before we take that leap into retirement. And what do you think is the biggest thing that people just don't know about what that is like?
Well, one of the biggest misconceptions that I see in all of these advertisements for workshops and seminars and dinner events and so forth is that people are being offered magic bullets. Everything will be perfect if you will just.
And usually, call now.
Yeah, and exactly. And it is important that you call soon. It doesn't have to be at this instant. But it's important that you get on with these things.
I just want them to call you.
Well, and I want them to call too, because we really care about our clients and we want to help them not make a mistake. I've been doing this for 31 years, Ralph.
Right, yeah.
I've made my share of mistakes. I've seen clients make their share of mistakes. And in 31 years, we've hopefully accumulated enough body of knowledge that we can avoid some of those problems. Yeah. So there's no one single product. There's no one single strategy. Each retirement plan is custom designed for that family and the things that they want to accomplish.
And Barry, they're also seeing on the screen how to get a visit planned or how to get the toolkit that Barry offers, all kinds of other information that you and your family can look through when they get that retirement toolkit. Up next, Barry will explain how different kinds of retirement income are taxed, why that matters so much. It's straight ahead in this week's Steps to Confidence with Barry over at the big board. Later on the show here, don't go far, Barry will tackle some of your biggest retirement questions sent in from all over the Ozarks as Watts on Wealth, the TV show, rolls on to your screen right after this.
Planning for retirement can be complicated. Helping create income that lasts, making sure your health care is covered, investing while managing risk, and don't forget about taxes. If you're overwhelmed, you're not alone. The good news is we have what you need to give you confidence to start planning for your ideal retirement, all in one convenient resource. You'll get answers to some of your biggest retirement questions in this easy-to-understand, practical resource. And best of all, there's no cost to you. Take the first step toward a confident retirement and get yours today.
Welcome back into the show. For this weekend's Steps to Retirement Confidence, Barry explains how different kinds of retirement income are taxed. Barry?
Thank you, Ralph. On this segment called Steps to Retirement Confidence, I want to talk with you about one of the most significant issues you're going to face during retirement, an issue that can erode your confidence if you don't plan properly for it. And that particular issue is taxes. For all the years that are ahead of you in retirement, one of three things is going to be true. Either taxes are going to go up, taxes are going to go down, or taxes are going to stay the same. Now think about it for a moment and tell me, what do you believe is going to happen to taxes in retirement? According to the government's own CPA, a guy by the name of David Walker, he says taxes have to increase in retirement. In fact, as early as 2009, he said that we had no choice but to double taxes over time. The government's own Congressional Budget Office has said in the future that we'll have only two tax brackets that most of us will fit into. And one of those brackets will be in the 60% rate, and one of them will be in the 90% rate. The Wharton Business School at the University of Pennsylvania says that the government only has two choices going forward. And those two choices are to either increase taxes by 40%, or if they don't want to do that, the Congress could reduce spending by 30%. Now you tell me, what do you think is more likely to occur? Do you think it's more likely that Congress will reduce spending by 30%? Or is there a better chance that they will increase taxes by 40% over time? The simple fact is that you and I are going to face higher tax rates in retirement. And we have to plan for those and strategize to get around those. And the good news is, I've got a solution that will be helpful for you. You see, I want you to think about your taxes in one of two different tax buckets. Actually, three different tax buckets. And the first of those buckets that I would like for you to consider is what we call the tax deferred bucket. Now, I want you to think about all the money you have and think for a moment about how much of that money is in this particular bucket. This is the bucket where your IRA is. It's the bucket where your 401k is. Anything that you've gotten a tax benefit for saving goes into this bucket. And then in the future, you're going to have to take money out of this bucket. And if we've already established that in the future tax rates are going higher, then when you take money out of this bucket, you're going to pay more in taxes to take it out than you benefited in taxes to put it in there in the first place. Now, that's the first of the tax buckets, but there are two others that I want to tell you about. One of the other tax buckets that you can use is right over here. This is called the taxable bucket. This is where your W-2 goes, the money that you receive from salary and income. This is where your 1099 goes. That's the little money you've got at the bank and they're paying you nominal interest on it. All of that goes into this bucket here where it is taxable every year. You don't get any deferral on it. Whatever you grow in this bucket, you're growing it taxably every year, and when you put money into this bucket, you've paid taxes on it to go into that bucket in the first place. Now, there's one other bucket that I want to tell you about that you might not know exists. This bucket is the tax-free bucket. And it might be of interest to you to know, why is one of the buckets so big and the other two buckets so relatively small? It's simply this. I've been doing this for 31 years, and the people who come to see me, by and large, have most of their money in this bucket. Because the government has incentivized you to pay for retirement by putting money into the tax-deferred bucket. The problem, of course, is that you're going to have to pay taxes on that at a higher rate later, and you're paying taxes on this particular bucket every year as you go. Now, this bucket down here is tax-free. Boy, that's wonderful, but notice how little this bucket is. That represents the fact that hardly anybody has any money in this bucket in comparison and respective to how much money they have in the middle bucket. So what I want to challenge you about is how important it is to take money that you have in this bucket now that's going to be taxable in the future at every increasing tax rates, and instead move some of this money down here to this bucket. You can do that through what is called a strategic Roth integration. It's IRS spelled backwards, strategic Roth integration. You take money from this bucket and you take that money and you pour it out into this bucket down here. And as you do that, you have to pay taxes at today's rates, but you avoid having to pay the tax at future rates when it's going to be higher. And in fact, the good news is you can even take money that you have in this bucket down here, the taxable bucket, and move it down to the tax-free bucket as well. So, in a perfect world, here's what we would like for it to look like. We'd like for you to have most of your money sitting down here in a tax-free bucket. We'd like for you to have as little money as possible down here in the taxable and tax-free buckets. And if you would like to know how to do that in the future, how to have more money in your tax-free bucket and not as much money in your taxable and your tax-deferred buckets, well then at the Wealth Care Corporation, we can show you how to make that happen. And we'd be glad to help you learn more about that. Just give us a call today.
Barry, thank you very much. Great advice. And coming up here on the program, Barry will answer some of your most pressing retirement questions in our Q&A segment straight ahead. You're watching Watts on Wealth. We'll return right after this break.
When it comes to planning for the future, time may not always be on your side. Think about your taxes. Tax rates are historically low right now, but they'll likely be higher in the future. Our current tax rates are set to expire in just a few short years. With the right planning and strategy, you might be able to cut your tax bill in the years to come. But don't wait until it's too late to take advantage of today's lower tax rates. Let us be your partner in planning for tomorrow so you can enjoy your retirement today.
Along with J. Barry Watts, I'm your host, Ralph Hipp, with the Watts on Wealth TV show, and time in the broadcast to take some time answering a few of your specific questions about finances and retirement planning. Barry, we always get some great questions from our viewers, and are you ready for this next round?
We do, and I enjoy answering them. Let's do it.
Okay, let's check in with Elaine in Monette, and her question is, I'm less than a year away from retiring. I have retirement accounts, and I've been working with a broker for years. I guess I've never considered how taxes will affect me once I start taking my withdrawals. How will I be taxed?
Well, thank you, Elaine, for your question, and say hello to my sister-in-law, Amy Box, who's your prosecuting attorney down there in Berry County.
A little legal shout out there.
They're just a shout out to sister-in-law Amy. So now to answer the question, if you aren't careful, the taxes on your investment account can leave you broker. And that is often the case if you're working with a stock broker or an investment representative. You want to pay some attention to the titles they use, because those people typically don't know about taxation and cannot give you tax advice and won't give you tax advice because they don't know. So I'm really glad you asked this question. Our retirement planning firm is called the WealthCare Corporation, and it's a little different. We do provide tax advice to our clients. In fact, we represent people before the IRS. We've got tax return preparation specialists in our firm who are in the tax compliance business, and our CPA used to work for the IRS. So you're in the right place, and he knows the dirty secrets, and he knows when you need to be afraid and when you don't need to be afraid, and he'll tell you most of the time, if you've told the truth on your tax return, there's absolutely no reason to be afraid. So, Elaine, you're going to have to pay taxes on all the money that you take out of your retirement account, along with taxes on your pensions and any other guaranteed source of income. And depending on how much income you have, you may even have to pay taxes on Social Security. Now, if you and your husband, assuming you're married, make more than about $32,000, that's where you begin paying taxes on Social Security. And don't forget, you have to pay taxes to ugly Aunt Irma. That's what your Medicare tax is called. Income-related monthly adjustment amount. IRMA. It's government speak. How could you name something like that? Some people have to pay more than $13,000 a year just for their Medicare alone, and then they buy a Medicare supplement on top of that. So the good news, Elaine, is that there is still time for you to begin curtailing some of those taxes. But you need to act now. You need to rearrange your retirement to be as tax efficient as possible, maybe even tax-free if you're lucky.
All right. On to our next question. This is from Jim in Billings, and Jim says, my wife and I are lucky enough to have retired comfortably already, but we're concerned with our 2 adult children. They just aren't ready to fully launch out on their own, and this is going to start eating into our savings to continue to support them. Barry, they want to know, what do we do to help our children without harming our retirement?
Well, Jim, Christian County is not very different than Stone County where I grew up, and I just want to tell you that sometimes the best love is tough love. And sometimes parents can't be tough enough on their children when they need to be, and that's a difficult thing. But I think perhaps the best thing you could do is, instead of giving your child another dollar, is give them a lesson instead. Set them down and explain to them the situation that you're dealing with, that you simply can't afford to keep paying for their lifestyle. Tell them they need to go to work productively and that they need to get equipped so they can support themselves. Now, you didn't say how old the children are, but you did call them adults, and so I hope they're educated, and by that, I mean I hope they don't have a degree in philosophy, because it's kind of hard to make a living with those degrees that end in osophy. But, give me a good plumber or an electrician over a philosopher anytime. And I like philosophy. I'm a philosophical kind of guy, but I need the lights to work and the plumbing to work at the house. So, Jim, you're in a spot. And I don't have advice that can alter 20 years of training that you've invested into your kids, but I'd say you're just going to have an honest heart-to-heart. You're probably going to have to cut them off, and that's going to be tough, and your wife may not want to do that. You have to stand firm in your resolve, and you need to let them sink or swim, and you might be amazed at how well they can dog paddle when they have to.
And they may have some years to plan their own retirement. Get going on that for them. Lynn in Branson is writing, Barry, I'm 63, and all my life I've been investing consistently, including in my 403B at work. My advisor says I'm doing great, not to worry about retirement, but I kind of feel like it's time for a more solid plan. What should I do?
Oh, Lynn, you're doing great, and don't worry about it. That is not a retirement plan. Now, you said you have a 403B, so I'm guessing that you might be a teacher or nurse and you work in a nonprofit sector in some way. So here are some questions that you could use to evaluate whether or not it might be time for you to get a second opinion. Number one, do you have an advisor, a retirement advisor, or an investment salesperson? Are they about advice or are they about selling you product? Number two, have they prepared you a year-by-year retirement income plan for this year and next year and the next year and every year until you're 100 years old? Number three, have they shown you how to reduce or eliminate income taxes? Do they talk taxes at all to you? Have they helped you to develop a strategy to pay for your long-term care? That would be question number four. And are they actively engaged in your estate plan? That's number five. Are they working to help you make sure that your money goes where you want it to, in the amounts and the timing that you want it to? And are they helping you understand what you may already have? We find a lot of people who come in have been to lawyers and they've got documents. They have no idea what the documents are, whether the documents are even properly funded or not. And so we help people discern that, sort through what they have and really understand. So those are some questions that I'd be asking myself if I were you. And if you need a second opinion, that's exactly what our team of advisors and tax specialists do at the Wealth Care Corporation. You can use the information at the bottom of your screen to reach out to us, and we'll be glad to talk with you.
Barry, really good questions, really good answers, and always love to open up that mailbag and see what their concerns are around
I
the
enjoy
Ozarks.
answer questions. We should do a whole show of nothing but questions. That would be fun.
We could definitely do that.
We could do it with a live studio audience.
And let them have some questions.
That would
and
be fun
answers.
too.
Yeah, they'd stand right up and ask. Boy, there's never a question that we don't need a good answer for.
That's right.
So appreciate your insight on all that. Well, if you want to know how to generate lifetime income, reduce that big tax bill, and maintain your lifestyle that you want in retirement, reach out now to Barry Watts to start planning for your ideal retirement. For Barry and the whole team at the Wealth Care Corporation, this is Ralph Hipp, and Barry and I sure hope you have a great day, a great weekend, and a super retirement.